Once you've emailed in your application, make sure that you check your sent items, that it's gone in, and that it hasn't bounced back due to a lot of attachments or anything like that. And if you're sending in original documents, you'll obviously have to send them in the post. Make sure you send it registered post so that your documents don't get lost, and keep the tracking number as proof of postage. And that's the address that you send it to there on the slide. And then sorry, I'm just trying to get my slides to go. Okay, so in terms of certified copies, it's really important that you get this done correctly, because otherwise they will not accept them. So who can certify a true copy of an original document? Well, in Ireland, that would be a practicing solicitor, a commissioner for oaths, or a notary public. In Afghanistan or another country, it might be a solicitor, notary public, commissioner for oaths, or equivalent, or an agent of a recognized international organization such as the UNHCR, or the Red Cross, or the IOM, or equivalent. To certify a copy, the original has to be seen by the person certifying it, and it must clearly state that they've seen the original document. They must stamp the copy with their office stamp. They must sign it with their name, the date, their profession, and their address. So all these things must be on it for it to be accepted as a certified copy. The department reserves the right to request the original, and failure to comply with such a request will result in your application being refused. This is all these things about will result in your application being refused. We've just taken this from the guidance they've provided. So we're just passing on the information. So over now to Katie.
So I'm going to go through a little bit about who can apply. So the proposer. So the proposer in the application is the person in Ireland. So that's you, most likely. So you must be Afghan originally. So it includes Irish citizens, naturalized Irish citizens, and Afghan nationals with permission to reside in Ireland. It provides that you must hold an immigration permission with 12 months remaining, or if your permission is renewable in next February at the date that the scheme will close. So it is important, if your immigration permission is coming to an end, to renew that now, and to take steps to do that. And we will go through each of these requirements in detail, but just as a kind of in brief, you must be able to financially support your family members until they can support themselves, able to provide accommodation for your family members, and be of good character with no criminal convictions. And we'll go through each of those in more detail. So really, I suppose we probably should have said from the outset that the whole scheme is it's really about completing one long form, which is available on the irishimmigration.ie website, and you'll probably have looked at that already. And there is a guidance document on the form as well, or on the website as well. And we've just taken our information from that to try to break it down to make it a little bit easier to digest. So the form breaks all the information down into the information you must give about yourself, the proposer. And those details include your personal details, your name, your address, your contact details, then your PPS number, your residency details, and details about your income and accommodation. And then lots of details about your good character, so how they will assess your good character. Next slide, please, Heidi. So you must prove, and you have to prove who you are. So the first thing is to prove your identity through giving original documents or certified true copies of your documents, as Heidi has explained. And you have to prove each of these different aspects: that you are a current or former Afghan national. You will also have to prove the family relationship of each proposed beneficiary to you. Also, you'll have to show documents showing your citizenship and your immigration permission, and that you can financially support your family member and that you can provide accommodation. I know I'm repeating myself a bit, but I'm just showing that you have to prove each of these different aspects, that you will set out the information in the document, and then you must also provide the supporting documents to prove it. So as I've said, if your immigration is due to expire, you should renew it as soon as possible. And if you have any difficulties in registration, you should keep records of all attempts you have made to renew your status, because you might need to show that. And then the checklist for immigration permission. You should have documents, including your naturalization certificate, your letter of immigration permission from the Irish Immigration Service, and your IRP card. So you'll need to show certified copies of each of those documents. The good character statement is important, and the Gardaí will carry out a check on your character, similar in some ways to a check that is carried out when you're applying for a new job or in the naturalization application. And the documents provide that each proposer and beneficiary must be of good character with no criminal convictions. And you know, when you are signing the document, you are agreeing for your application and for your documents and details to be checked by the Gardaí, and they could also be checked by state security services and other agencies. So it is important to be aware of that when you are providing information, because you are agreeing that your information will be shared. The documents provide that involvement in war crimes, crimes against humanity, or participation or support of for terrorist-related activities will result in exclusion from the programme, and also that giving false or misleading information will result in your application being refused or in the revocation of any permissions granted on foot of that application. And if you have committed any offences, you know, if they are minor offences, it might not be the end of the application. It could still be granted, but you will need to provide details of that, and that will be if it's a minor offence. So you should provide details of the nature of the offence, the date of conviction or judgment, where the conviction or judgment took place, the outcome of the conviction, and full details of any punishment that was handed down. So it is really important to provide those details. So that's about you, the person based in Ireland. Now we'll look at the proposed beneficiaries, and the beneficiaries are the people you want to apply for. And the scheme provides, and I know this is the part of the scheme that has been so hard for so many people to digest, is that you can apply for up to 4 close family members. And I realize that it is extremely difficult for people to prioritize their family members in that way. And the family members that are envisaged by the scheme are your spouse or your civil partner, your adult children, where they are unmarried and don't have any children themselves, your minor children, and that includes children who are legally adopted. And again, those children should be unmarried and should not have their own children. And then it goes on to related minor child without parents for whom you have parental responsibility. And I realize that that may arise from many people whose maybe siblings may have died, unfortunately, recently. Unmarried siblings, and I realize, you know, this is certainly a category of people that we have had a lot of queries about, our siblings and their spouses and their children. And I know people are worried about that category of person. But unfortunately, the scheme provides that it is unmarried siblings only. So I think that will be a real limitation of the scheme. Then parents, grandparents, and vulnerable adult close family members. So that could be uncles, aunts, nieces, or nephews. And again, those must be unmarried and without a partner or other close relative to support them. And the the documents are clear that if your proposed beneficiary does not fall within one of these categories, they are not eligible for inclusion in the programme, and your application will be refused for them. So section 2 of the form provides that you must provide written consent from the proposed beneficiaries to share their information. So when you're speaking to your family members about the scheme, you should tell them, I'm going to be sharing all this information with the Department of Justice and I need your consent for that. The scheme, it's limited by what country people are in. So they can either still be in Afghanistan or they must have moved since August to Iran, Pakistan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, or Tajikistan. And again, we need to provide all the personal details relating to your family members. So that includes passport details, their date and place of birth, their national ID card number, their marital status, which, as we see, is important from the department's assessment of who they will accept under the scheme, their address, and really, really importantly, the reason your family member is at risk. And we'll talk about that more in a minute, but the reason your family member is at risk is just a very important category to consider and will be necessary to get documents around that. So proving identity. So obviously the best proof is your original current passport or certified copy. You must provide written consent from proposed beneficiaries to share their information, as I've already said. And if your proposed beneficiary does not have a passport, certain other documents containing a clear passport style photograph and their name and date of birth may be accepted. So maybe there means that it won't definitely accept it, but that it might be. And the document provides that to be accepted, it must have been issued originally for the purpose of verifying identity by a national authority or by a recognized non-governmental organization. So for example, UNHCR. Then, I suppose despite that possibility, beneficiaries will require a current valid passport for travel, and there is no automatic entitlement for beneficiaries of the programme to apply for or be granted an Irish travel document. It's hard to know how that will be read. I mean, clearly a travel document will not be issued to everybody, but it seems that there might be a possibility in some limited circumstances of people applying for travel documents. The next thing you'll need to prove is the relationship. So you must provide certified copies or original documents that show you are related to your proposed beneficiary. So if it's your spouse, obviously it'll be a marriage certificate or other evidence that clearly shows you've married your spouse in accordance with the law in Afghanistan. If it's for a sibling, you'll need to show birth certificates, both your own birth certificate and your sibling's birth certificate. For related minor children without parents, you need to show evidence of legal guardianship and also a letter from the adult who the child is living with now. And DNA testing may be required. Where the department is satisfied that the relationship is genuine, but where documents are insufficient to prove this. And we understand that DNA testing is happening in Afghanistan at the moment, so that may be a possibility. Documents for proving relationships with children include birth certificates. If the child's parent has died, you'll need to show their death certificate. And then if somebody is missing, they have a requirement that you show documentary evidence such as police reports or tracing requests from organizations such as the Red Cross or the Red Crescent, showing significant efforts to locate the other parent. I think, probably a lot of people have gone missing in the last few months, and I'm not sure to what extent people are engaging with the Red Cross or the Red Crescent around them. But if there is a possibility of doing that, I realize people have probably been making very extensive efforts to locate any family members themselves and through their own means, but maybe it is worth considering that to take steps to do that now to contact the Red Cross or the Red Crescent if that's a possibility. For the relationship, it also requires that there's a court order or sole legal guardianship order or equivalent from a court in the country where the child is from, stating you've been formally granted sole parental custody and responsibility, including the reason for the grant. I'm not sure how realistic it is that people will be able to provide that. If the child is not yours by birth, you'll need to show written parental consent if the other biological parent is alive. So that's all specific to the child. For every beneficiary, they will need to show 3 passport-sized photographs. And I think it be possible, like we've done with visa applications, to take the photograph, to send the photograph, and to have those printed in Ireland. And then any documents available that can explain how and why this beneficiary in particular is at risk to their freedom and safety. So really, this program, they don't want to hear lots of information about why there are difficulties in Afghanistan generally. They want to hear specifically why your family members in their particular locality or for their particular individual personal reasons cannot, are at risk. And some examples might include copy of workplace identity card, including registration number or employee number if available, copy of letter of appointment, copies of pay slips if available. That would be particular to when somebody's previous work is putting them at risk. So you must list your beneficiaries in order of priority. So that means putting the person down first who you believe is at most risk. And priority will be given to the following family members of the proposer when they're assessing applications. So the first category of persons that will be considered will be minor children of the applicant who are not married. Next, spouse or civil partners, and next, parents. And then after that, the other categories of people will be considered. And I suppose they're really focusing in this scheme on people who are at risk. And you need to tick in respect of each of your family members, why is your family member at risk? Is it because they're an older person, a child, a single woman or girl, a person with a disability, a person whose previous employment exposes them to risk, or other? And I guess that many will fall within that other category, and if they do, they will need to provide a lot of detail explaining why they are at risk. And the document provides, if you do not tell us about the risk to their freedom and safety, your application will be refused in respect of the proposed beneficiary. So it's really clearly very important that you write down why the person is at risk. And I realize, particularly from AHAP, when we were doing it previously, how difficult this is for people, because it really asks you to think about the dangers your family members are in. And I appreciate that is extremely difficult to do, but it is important for this process that you think through that and that you discuss that with your family members, because that is the reason somebody will be accepted under this program. So you need to provide as much information as possible about why your family member is at risk. Why are they at a significantly increased risk to their freedom and safety compared to everybody else in the country? And you need to provide any documentary evidence, any documents that shows them, particularly that names them, that gives their name or shows why they as an individual are at a significantly increased risk. You can provide extra pages. So generally, they're quite clear in the document that you should have all the information that you want considered in the form. But you can include additional pages. And for the pages about why they are at risk, you mark those as 2A26. And then you can include information about events in the person's locality since August 2021, but they don't want your generic or general information about Afghanistan will not be enough. So it really needs to be specific about your family member and about the area where they're living. I guess where somebody doesn't fall within the specific categories, one of the possibilities still open to them is where their previous employment exposes them to risk. And in that case, you must provide details of the previous employer, contact details, the role they had with the employer, and how long they were working with them. And the form also asks whether you consent for the department to contact your former employer, but the forms are clear that the department will not contact current or former Afghan national authorities to confirm details of employment, because obviously that would put people at risk. But the department may contact international bodies, foreign governments, or non-Afghan commercial entities where they were employed by those categories of people, and where the beneficiary gives consent through you. So you will have to think about whether that would be suitable for your family member, or if that might put them at more risk. But perhaps if you don't want to give that consent, you could provide photographs or IDs or documents, any employment documents that show what employment they held previously. There is also this section in the documents about social media, which I think is new in this type of program, and it is an optional section. You can provide social media account details for LinkedIn, Facebook, or Twitter in respect of your family members. And this might be relevant if your family had an active account and if he or she is happy for it to be viewed for the purpose of this application. The purpose is an alternative means to verify identity, to look, I'm guessing that it might also show any previous activism or relevant activity or education that, or something that puts the person at risk. But I'm just aware in saying this that, you know, having active social media profiles could, you know, be putting your family member at risk to the extent that they might be better off having shut that down. But if they haven't shut it down, and if they haven't felt it necessary to shut it down, they may want to provide details in the form. So the proposed beneficiaries will be assessed on the basis of the risk factors. So it is really, really important that you give every information you have in relation to the risk to freedom and safety of the proposed beneficiaries, your family members, because it is those who are deemed to be most at risk who will be granted permission ahead of other beneficiaries. And the decisions will be based on the nature of the risk, the vulnerability of the particular person to that risk, and whether the risk to this particular person has increased since August. So that is why you need to list your proposed beneficiaries in order of priority. So I guess the department doesn't know how many applications, they have no real way of knowing how many applications they will receive. They've committed to accepting up to 500 people, but they will have to break it down. And if the numbers are much higher, this is what they will be considering people under. I'm going to hand over to Kira now to look at accommodation.
Hi, everybody. So just to remind you that we're taking the information here just from the guidance booklet, the guidance materials. So I just have the hyperlink down at the bottom. So in terms of accommodation, the proposer must be able to provide accommodation for all of the successful beneficiaries on arrival in the state until they can provide their own accommodation. So we've had some questions around this for people that want to apply for a certain number of people. You must be able to provide accommodation for all of the successful beneficiaries. The application may be refused if the proposer does not show that they can accommodate all of the beneficiaries listed. So that's really important. Also important is that further information or documents received after the closing date will not be considered as part of an application, meaning proof of accommodation must be secured and evidence at the time of submitting the application. So it won't do to say, oh, we'll rent somewhere when the person arrives. You need to have that accommodation secured when you're submitting the application. Beneficiaries will not be entitled to social housing or local authority housing provided by the state. nor housing assistance payments, so AHAP, or any payments funded by the state to support accommodation. This doesn't mean that they can't be accommodated within your local authority house, but they themselves won't be independently entitled to social housing. If you intend that your family will live in your own home, so they're going to come and stay in your home, you'll be asked to supply the number of bedrooms and the total floor area in square meters of your house. If you're renting your home, you must provide a letter of consent from your landlord or your local authority, a copy of your tenancy agreement, including the details of the floor area in square meters and/or the maximum number of persons permitted to reside in the property. The letter must contain all of the following. So the following information: a statement that you have permission for the proposed beneficiaries to live in the property with you and with those living there, the maximum number of persons permitted to live in the property, permission for the full number of proposed beneficiaries, that the permission is valid for 12 months, and any other conditions set by the landlord or local authority. The full name, business address, and phone number of the person giving the permission, their signature and the date of signature, and the full address of the property. So that's for the landlord or for the local authority to give you that express permission. So you need to include all of that information. If your proposed beneficiaries are going to live in a different place to you in Ireland, you must submit a letter from the property owner showing that they have made an offer of accommodation for your family members to live in the property. So if it's a friend, a colleague, somebody that you know, they must provide a similar letter. They must give the full address of the property again, including the air code. And if the property cannot be accurately located, so if they can find that property using the address information that you provide in the application form, your application will be refused in respect of the proposed beneficiaries who you intend to live there. So if you say my 3 relatives are going to live here, if they can't find that accommodation, it may be refused. This is an important note here. It says, where there is doubt about the suitability of the accommodation available, we will use the accommodation standards operated by your local authority for the provision of local authority houses as the basis. So this is important. Different local authorities have slightly different rules. So say Fingal or Dunleary Down, and this is really all about space and suitability. So for example, they won't allow people to share rooms. You know, if they're a married couple, that's okay. If they're children, that's okay. If the mother and child, that could be okay, but you can't put, say, 6 people, you know, obviously to a room, and there's regulations and standards around that. So that's important as well. So then onto the financial requirements. It says that the proposer must be able to financially support all successful beneficiaries on arrival in the state until they can support themselves. This includes costs associated with coming to the state and all health-related costs while in the state. So that's important in terms of flights, and until they can support themselves, you know, that's open to interpretation, but that's what it says in the guidance. Application may be refused if the proposer does not show that they can financially support all of the beneficiaries listed. Beneficiaries will not be entitled to social assistance payments or child benefit under the Social Welfare Consolidation Act for the first 2 years. And each beneficiary over the age of 16 will have to pay a fee of €300 to register their immigration permission and to receive their IRP card. That's formerly the GNIB card. So that's normal, it's €300. The department have not provided a specifically defined amount given to support family members. So while they say you should be able to support family members until they're up on their own feet, it doesn't give a figure. So it doesn't tell you exactly how much money you need to have made in the previous 12 months. Social welfare income isn't a barrier necessarily. You can show that you have savings yourself, or if the beneficiary of your family member has personal wealth, resources, or income. But there's 2 really important things to consider here. So number 1, those resources, you have to prove that they're readily available. So they're available now. They're not tied up in you know, say businesses, land, property that the person can't access right now. And also just a reminder of what Katie and Heidi have said before, is that all of this information has to be included as much as possible within the form itself. So if you want to say, well, I've got the financial requirements because of my savings, make sure that you write that within the form. So put it in within a question, as opposed to in like a cover letter or something. All the relevant information, it's critical that you get it in there in the form. If you need to add in extra pages, do so, but say this is, you know, question 2A or whatever question it is. Your financial resources do not have to be in Ireland. So you, the proposer, they don't have to be in Ireland, but they must be readily available to you at short notices for these purposes. Proof of this is required. So that's really, really important. Any evidence showing that you have a reliable, stable income and or readily accessible financial resources should be submitted. Examples that will be accepted include tax clearance certificates, P60, 12 months pay slips, accountant's report of resources, and so on. Again, in that guidance document that's hyperlinked on the first slide that on the accommodation slide, it gives a full account of what kind of evidence will be accepted. Okay, so this is Heidi again, so I'm just going to hand over to Heidi again, and then I'll be back at the end.
Thanks, Kira. So that covers sections 1 and 2 of the form, which Katie and Kira have explained to us. So moving on to sections 3 and 4 at the end of the form. So these are the signature and statutory declaration. It seems kind of obvious and simple, but it's really important to get it right, because even a small mistake on the signature could result in them refusing the application. So you must sign and date the application form at section 3. If the signature is missing or is not dated, your application will be refused. After you have signed and dated the application form, you must complete the statutory declaration in section 4 in the presence of a practicing solicitor, a commissioner for oaths, or a notary public. The date of the signature should be either dated on or before the date of the statutory declaration. So in other words, you should only do the statutory declaration after you have signed section 3, or your application will be refused. So then the statutory declaration, this is basically where you are kind of swearing that everything is true in the application. So it must be completed after the rest of the form has been completed. And you must do it in the presence of a practicing solicitor, a commissioner for oaths, or a notary public authorised to receive statutory declarations. And you're basically confirming that all the information provided is correct, that your family members understand the terms of the programme and that they agree to them. So you need to have discussed this with your family members. You're confirming that you and your family members understand that you may have to undergo DNA testing. So you need to discuss that with your family members. That you will make arrangements and pay for all the travel costs to Ireland. That you will arrange and pay the full cost of accommodating your family members until they're in a position to support themselves. That you will support them and maintain them financially until your family members are in a position to support themselves without recourse to social welfare or other state funds. And there are some other things in the statutory declaration that you will also be confirming. So it's a really important legal thing that you have to do in the presence of one of those people. So then your application is going to be sent in. As I said, it can go in by email or by post, registered post. And the department haven't told us how long they're going to take to make a decision, but they've said once they see the volume of applications they receive, I think they are going to give some indication of how long it's going to take them to process them. And then all the decisions are going to be issued, we are led to believe. So if you get a positive decision, you'll need to apply for a visa for your relatives to actually travel to Ireland. And then once they arrive, you will need to go to the GNIB or other Garda station to register their permission. And for over 16s, it will cost €300, as Kira has said, for the Irish residence permit. If, on the other hand, you receive a negative decision, there is an appeal process. You will have 20 working days to lodge an appeal, and you can do this by email. The review, we are told, will be papers-based, and the information says that any additional information or documentation will not be accepted. That's what it says. And the appeal decision should issue within 50 working days of receipt of the appeal notification. So if you are successful, you'll be granted temporary permission for a 2-year period. And then thereafter, beneficiaries can apply to renew it. It's not automatic. Or if you become eligible for some other type of permission, you could apply for that type of permission. and it will be subject to having complied with the conditions. So the conditions are quite stringent. It says there that you will be entitled to work without any additional permit or to operate a business. For children, they'll be able to attend primary or secondary school, and you'll be able to access emergency treatment only in the public health system. On the other hand, they will not be entitled to social assistance payments or to child benefit, to social housing or local authority housing, as Kira's already explained, to housing assistance payment to support the cost of accommodation. They won't be entitled to state-funded third-level education or to family reunification under the International Protection Act. And they won't be entitled to automatic renewal of permission. So it will be something that you would have to apply for. And handing over to Kira.
Yeah, so just how can we help? So just a reminder that we're a small team with limited capacity. We'll try to support as many people as possible, either in-house or by referring to external law firms who have agreed to take on cases on a pro bono basis. We must give priority to those who fall within very limited criteria or have urgent vulnerability, compelling evidence, which we may request flexibility. So that includes those with literacy or language barrier issues and those proposers who themselves are particularly vulnerable. So it's kind of case by case. If you do intend to apply for by yourself, we have some specific questions. You can contact our drop-in service. So I'm in the drop-in centre. Some people might know myself or my colleagues. We'll do our best to respond to your queries. You can email us there at the info@Irish Refugee Council email, or you can call us from 10 till 4, Monday, Tuesday and Thursday. I appreciate we've been extremely busy on the phone since August, so sorry if you've had any delays in getting through to us. We're back in the office on the 4th of January after Christmas break, so we'd encourage people to use the time between then and now to try and gather documents, take a look at that guidance form that we've linked in these slides, and just make sure that you have as much as you possibly can. And just a reminder then that the AHAP is not a legal process, so it's not a legal process, but you could and you would benefit from legal advice. If you can access a private legal counsel, please do, and if not, you can reach out to us and we'll try to assist you as best we can. So we have a couple of scenarios here, some questions that we've gotten, and I know that there's a few more questions maybe in the chat. If people have some questions here, I might ask maybe Katie or Heidi to help with these scenarios, but these are some that we've gotten. So I was granted refugee status in Ireland after the 1st of September. Am I still eligible? Yeah, you're eligible once you've received it on or before the 1st of September. I think I'm correct in saying that. I'm an applicant for international protection. Can I still apply? So according to what the department have said, you must have a legal permission to live in Ireland. So our understanding is that you can't apply if you're still in the system, and you must have status here. My family member and I meet the criteria for the scheme. However, he fled Afghanistan after the Taliban takeover and is now in Dubai, a non-border country. So no, that person will not be eligible if they're in Dubai. It's very strict on the border countries. So as Katie or Heidi have already highlighted, it's Tajikistan, Iran, Pakistan, and so on. The list is there. I applied for joint family visas for my family members, and I'm still waiting for a decision. Should I apply for AHAP for them? Our advice would be, based on the guidelines here, that yes, you should. If you feel that your family members meet that very strict criteria, and you feel that it could apply to them, yes, we would say that you should apply, because as anybody who's applied for a joint family visa knows, the kind of standard there is extremely high. A joint family visa is not catered towards any kind of humanitarian considerations. Really, they're very hard to obtain. So yes, it's worth exploring this option. I want to bring my sister and her 4 children. However, the government have stated that the maximum is 4. Do I stand a chance? So we're very we don't want to give kind of opinion or how we think this might be applied. So what we're saying is that the department are saying 4 people. However, that's really, it's up to you to decide if you want to go ahead and try for a 5th person. We're not sure yet. As Heidi has already said, it's supply and demand. So we don't know exactly how this is going to be applied. We don't know if it's going to be extremely strict. We don't know if there's going to be flexibility around that. So it may be worth applying, but we don't know yet. This hasn't been tested. My family members do not have valid passports. Can we still apply? Katie was talking there about the possibility of travel documents, maybe getting travel documents, but maybe Katie, you could speak to that if people don't have valid passports. Yeah, and then if there's any kind of questions, I'll just have a look through the chat now, and I'll see if there's anything that would kind of be worthwhile for everybody kind of on the chat. If not, we can contact